Chapter 1 starts with a story about Gabe Henderson. He says he's finding freedom in his decision to cancel his MySpace account. He's no longer enthralled with the world of social networking. He's realizing that a lot of the friends he had were really just acquaintances. He's also phasing out his profile on Facebook. He says, "The superficial emptiness clouded the excitement I had once felt. It seems we have lost, to some degree, that special depth that true friendship entails." This chapter, Chapter 1, The Fundamentals of Interpersonal Communication, begins a discussion that takes place throughout the remainder of our course. In this particular vignette about Gabe Henderson, it focuses on the discussion with the question, what is a true interpersonal relationship? Does MySpace count? Does Facebook count? Well, this book will ask those questions. At the bottom of page 4, you'll find the definition of interpersonal communication. The exchange of symbols used, at least in part, in the joint pursuit of interpersonal goals. That definition is based on the following 6 assumptions. First, interpersonal communication involves the exchange of symbols. Because words, after all, are arbitrarily assigned. They're nothing more than verbal and nonverbal symbols, representations of ideas, emotions. It's very important to understand the definition of a symbol versus that of a sign. A sign, or a signifier, would be, for example, that smoke is a sign of fire. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Words are not nearly as direct. When a person uses a word, that word does not naturally bring to mind, for every listener, the same image. For instance, look at the chair in which you're sitting. Who decided that chair was called a chair? Look at the desk, the lake, or Shirley. I don't know. That chair is an object, just like the word we use to represent it. The word we use to represent it is a symbol. Take the word dog. Some of you had a fluffy, sweet little pet when you were a child. That's what you call a dog. Others may have had more negative images of a dog. Maybe you're cat people. So it calls to mind a less friendly beast. Or maybe the guy at the bar who tried to pick you up last night. Or maybe somebody saying, "What's up, dog?" So words are symbols. Our exchange of them opens up a can of worms wherein we might misunderstand each other at every turn, because every word has personal meaning, which leads to my favorite quotation about the communication discipline, which is that meanings are in people, not words. Secondly, interpersonal communication involves mutual dependence because we rely on each other to achieve our goals. We're not completely independent from one another. Otherwise, the word communication really would not be fitting. We are communicating. Think about the words that start with C-O-M-M. Common, commune. Words that involve togetherness. And communication is no different. Understanding and sharing meaning is absolutely vital. So we depend on each other. Thirdly, interpersonal communicators themselves are changing constantly. We have to remember, we're always searching for meaning, continually developing strategies to adapt to what we learn in our social world. That means over the life cycle, we're going to change. They say you can't step in the same river twice. What that means for interpersonal communication is just because a certain word meant something to your mother last week, that doesn't mean that it means the same thing to her this week. She's changing as a person every day, and we have to remember that. We're not stagnant. Therefore, we have to remember that as communicators, we're always changing. And fourth, interpersonal communication is strategic. This may sound negative, the idea that we have a goals-based approach, just like the title of our textbook, as if we're constantly out to get whatever we can for ourselves. And that's not really what Canary, Cody, and Manusoft mean. What they mean by the term strategic is more in a broad context, that we have goals for our communication behavior that may even mean that we want good things to happen for other people. It just means there are things that are foundational for our survival, food and air and arguably sex. We also have safety needs, like locks on our doors and a police force. We need to feel like we're appreciated and taken care of and loved. And so we communicate to have our needs met and to accomplish our goals. Therefore, we communicate to get things done. We might not even be conscious of our goals. Examples include nonverbal communication, when our arms are crossed or we're looking at the ground. Next, communicators must be competent to achieve our goals. We need to be able to communicate effectively and put our own messages into appropriate words so that my audience understands what I'm talking about, and so that I am empathic or empathetic to my audience, so that I manage responsibly the communication interactions that I have, because otherwise my goals won't be achieved. So I need to look at effectiveness and appropriateness of my messages. And finally, communication should be ethical. Ethics concerns the use of principles to guide actions, and competent interaction requires mutual respect. I would be very surprised if any of you didn't demonstrate that level of professionalism. And as we engage in our discussions and move forward with the semester, I know you'll all keep things very, very professional, and I'm sure that can be a foundational assumption. We're going to skip a few pages, and you won't be responsible for the material. On 10 and 11, so now we're going to page 12 and talking about self-presentational goals, relational goals, and instrumental goals. Let's talk a little bit about each of those. First, self-presentational goals. One might call this face work. We've all heard the term saving face. Well, the idea of face work means that we can do certain things or say certain things to help people see us the way we want them to see us. And for the most part, others support our face work by not challenging it when we interact with them, and we tend to do the same for them in turn. Often we engage in very careful, selective self-presentation, especially online. If I want to look good, then I might wear makeup, or I might do my hair in a certain way. That's a nonverbal, communicative way that I might achieve my self-presentational goals. I want you to see me as attractive, professional. If I wear a low-cut blouse to work, then my self-presentational goal might be different. It might appear to others as if I'm trying to pick someone up, as opposed to trying to teach the lessons that I'm tasked to teach. Whereas if I'm wearing something very professional, then my self-presentational goals would appear more professional, and my goals would be met. So we don't always realize that our communication links to our goals and our outcomes. Sometimes we may accidentally dress in a way that, or speak in a way, or carry ourselves in a way that does not support the face we are trying to achieve. This can especially happen in our email communication to our professors or to others that are ahead of us on the path at work, or to IMs or texts that we might send. And so we have to be careful. Just because we're using something that might be a less formal form of interpersonal communication, that doesn't mean that we let go of our self-presentational goals. So something we need to consider is a balance between competence and friendliness. And am I willing to give up views that others would see me as competent in order to be seen as friendly? The second set of goals on page 14 is relational goals. Later we'll be talking about escalating relationships, maintaining relationships, and de-escalating relationships, which are just what they sound like. And we're not just talking about romantic relationships, but we're talking about every kind of relationship in the workplace, in the family, in friendships, that these relationships grow together, they stay or maybe even stagnate, and sometimes they grow apart and even end. But we do have relational goals like sharing activities, initiating relationships, keeping in touch with friends from high school. So certain things occur in each of these stages, and when a relationship hits a certain one of these stages, our relational goals may change, and the behaviors that we take part in are probably going to change as well. So in the ending chapters of our textbook, we'll touch on each of those aspects of a relationship, or those stages of a relationship, in a lot more detail. Now, what do all these things have to do with our interpersonal goals? Well, communication defines our personal relationships. Relationships are the products of our interpersonal communication. So the way that we communicate will create our relationships. Oops, shoot. Shoot. I'd love to point your attention to page 16, instrumental goals, which are dealing with the goals that we have during our interactions that are self-presentation, that are about our, hold on a second. That's better. Okay, I'd love to point your attention to page 16, instrumental goals, which are about self-advancement, and they usually involve obtaining some kind of resource or a favor. And in this case, in North America, instrumental goals are generally the most salient during interactions that that we have. So here, we usually put our self-advancement goals ahead of self-presentation and relational goals. Is that the way we want it? I don't know, but that's something for us to consider. And with that, I conclude Chapter 1, and I look forward to visiting with you further through our emails and course feedback. Have a great week.